Bună dimineața și bun găsit, doamnelor și domnilor prieteni, la o nouă întâlnire din seria pe care Energinomics vă o propune de aproximativ un an și 2 luni online. De această dată cu totul online, deși ne pregătim cu mare entuziasm pentru a reveni în condiții normale de organizare a conferințelor noastre. O conferință astăzi dedicată unei teme foarte puțin abordată, foarte rar, și anume spațiul de întâlnire dintre capacitățile, tehnologiile, cunoștințele din zona de petrol și gaze și alte tipuri de activități. Despre geotermal vom vorbi astăzi în principal, dar nu numai, veți vedea, despre regenerabile și despre digitalizare. Sunt alături de noi 5 invitați vorbitori și o primă schimbare pe care vreau să vă anunț: vom vorbi în engleză astăzi pentru a onora prezența alături de noi a domnului Zhu Chang, reprezentant al Huawei, care nu înțelege română, și atunci am decis împreună cu invitații noștri, cărora le mulțumesc pentru amabilitate, să folosim limba engleză. So, from now on English for the rest of our conversation, maybe 1 hour and a half, 2 hours for discussing this theme proposed to us by our friends from Chinook, and then supported by some other experts in the field: oil and gas and geothermal, transferable skills and technologies in upstream in Romania. Of course, we will be talking about technologies which are applied throughout all around the world, but especially on the specifics in Romania. I will start with a few words on the administrative side. So, as you know, you can follow us in YouTube, in Facebook, and in LinkedIn, but the most enjoyable experience is to be found on the My Connector platform. 141 people already registered there for seeing this conference, and also for sending us comments or questions using the dedicated chat box and Q&A box. I will be reviewing your intervention, and if case, I will take over the questions and address to the guests today. Our guests, as we agreed, will have around 10 to 15 minutes each for an initial presentation, with a keynote, with the key messages prepared for today, and before closing the conference, we'll have probably 20 or 30 minutes of open dialogue. So thank you for being with us, and don't be shy. Send us your comments and your questions. On the subject matter, for me, only 1 or 2 minutes of introduction, and I start by saying that for around 150 years, our society developed in the age of oil, of fossil fuels, maybe more correctly, from coal to oil and gas, an era, however, characterized by increased use of hydrocarbons, natural gas, oil, with all the processed products and the fuels. Now headed to renewables, we will still depend on oil and gas for the next decades, for energy, for heating, for transport, and for chemicals for more than 2 decades. This is of particular importance for Romania, I already said, because of its large reserves, and also because its extended oil and gas infrastructures. And this is the cornerstone that we can count on for the next years in order to capitalize on this solid geological knowledge and know-how for developing the geothermal energy sector, and for integrating renewables, whether it is wind, solar, or anything else, and or for introducing new energy carriers like hydrogen. So with the hope of bringing in front of you experts and companies able to inform us on these technologies, I start the conversation today by presenting very briefly the guests for this conversation. And now we are all visible online. Mr. Kalindra Goe from Shinu Consulting, Mr. Spencer Coca, President of ROPEPCA, Mr. Robert Gavriliuc, President of the Geothermal Society in Romania, Mr. Zhu Chang from Huawei, and Mr. Ionuț Tănase, expert also in the geothermal energy field. Thank you all for being here with us, and I will start by giving the floor to Mr. Robert Gavriliuc for the first intervention of the day. Mr. Gavriliuc, you have the floor. Please start the microphone.
Okay, and now
we can hear you.
Just a second. Can you see my screen, please?
Yes, we are.
Okay, so we go on. First of all, I want to thank you for this opportunity. I've been waiting for this opportunity for a very long time, and I'm very glad to be able to make my presentation today in front of so many participants at this event. So I'll try to be as synthetic as possible, but it's a very interesting and a very complex topic we are speaking about today. So my presentation is has the title Contribution to the Romanian Strategy on the Use of Shallow and Deep Geothermal Energy. So I cannot forget about shallow geothermal energy, although the implications with the oil and gas sector go mainly to the deep geothermal energy. Okay. Well, it seems that... Okay. Now we go on. This is a brief overview of my presentation. I'll speak about the usefulness of geothermal energy for local authorities, the energy needs for Romanian cities, and then I will speak about the renewable energy resources of Romania, geothermal and hydrothermal. I also touch the topic of technical solutions for the implementation of geothermal energy in buildings mainly, as I am teaching applied thermodynamics in a university specialized in civil engineering and building services. I will speak about the contribution of our association to the strategy and about our international visibility. Now, as you can see from this map here, you see the stars represent the municipalities in Romania which signed the Covenant of Mayors Agreement. The updated information shows that we have 178 signatories from Romania. And this shows the big commitment of local authorities with regard to the implementation of sustainable energy action plans at local level, thus trying to implement European policy with regard to energy and environment. How can the energy, the geothermal energy be used at the local level? You can see there is a large variety of possibilities for using the geothermal energy, starting from the production of electricity. Of course, if the temperature level of the available resource allows this. But it can also be used for office buildings, schools, kindergartens, hospitals, and family dwellings. So there is a large variety of possible applications in the building sector at local level. Of course, the possibility of covering the energy needs depend on these energy needs of the buildings. And here you have a map showing the climatic zones of Romania. We have 5 climatic zones. Romania is located in, let's say, classic temperate climate with 4 seasons. We experience a lot of changes during the last decades. However, the climatic zones of Romania are considered in the building codes, and all the calculations that we perform must take these climatic zones and climatic data in consideration. Here's a list with the Romanian cities which still have district heating systems. You can see that all the development regions still have some district heating systems, and I'm speaking about this because in Romania, during the last three decades, we experienced a terrible decrease in the number of district heating systems due to numerous facts. Up to today, we still have 69 district heating systems operating in Romania. And I'm speaking about this because this is a possible technical solution for the implementation of geothermal energy, be it deep geothermal or also possible to use shallow geothermal for district heating and cooling systems. And this is proven to be one of the most efficient systems for providing energy to buildings. This slide shows very briefly the origin of shallow geothermal energy. As you can see, the main source for shallow geothermal energy comes from the sun, because when we speak about shallow geothermal energy, we are thinking about a layer of up to maximum 400 meters depth. So in this superficial layer, we have most of the energy coming from the sun through direct insulation, direct radiation, or from infiltrating waters into the ground. But there is also a thermal flux coming from the inner liquid core of the Earth, the geothermal flux, which also has a contribution to this shallow geothermal source. Now I'm going to come to, let's say, to the some core elements of my presentation, and I'm going to present the resources that Romania benefits with regard to geothermal energy and also hydrothermal energy. Here you can see a map with the mineral water, springs and surface waters from Romania. Romania was blessed, I could say, with lots of such sources. It's one of the richest countries in Europe with this regard. And unfortunately, this is a resource we are not using properly. And as you can see, there is a very interesting superposition of these resources with cities, which might very well benefit not only from the spas that could be, let's say, modernized and updated, but also from the energy point of view. This is well, going further on, I'm going to present the most interesting regions from Romania, with which benefit from geothermal energy. This is in fact an example of how the underground water resource is being managed, and this is the map of Bucharest, which benefits a groundwater monitoring system. It was established first of all when the subway in Bucharest was built, and ever since it has been developed. Now this is going further with the presentation of deep geothermal energy sources. This is a map which has become quite classic, I would say, and this presents the resources with regard to deep geothermal, which Romania benefits. And these resources were mapped since the 60s and the 70s, when there was at national level a program for geological investigation for oil and gas, but sometimes oil and gas could not be found, and geothermal waters were found. And this is the result of that activity done 30 or 40 years ago. So you can see that the deep geothermal resources are located mainly on the western part of Romania, and this is the limit, the eastern limit of the so-called Pannonian Basin, which extends, of course, beyond the borders of Hungary into Romania, into Serbia and Slovenia, and so on. So you see the dots here on the map, which represent places with boreholes, deep geothermal boreholes, which are fully documented with regard to flow rates that they are able to provide, and temperatures and chemistry of the geothermal waters. Then you can see another reservoir is the one on the Olt Valley in the region of Kozia, Kalimonești, Ciulata. There is another very important reservoir located north of Bucharest, starting from the outskirts of Bucharest, going to Otopeni up to Snagov. And our colleague Ionuț Tănase will speak more about this. And then you will see that here in the Brăila region there is also some resource of deep geothermal waters. This is a map of something like an enlarged map of Bucharest and the northern region of Bucharest, showing the location of the deep wells, which are, as I said, very well documented, and some of them have been used, but some haven't. And there is a big hope to be able to use them again. These are the maps of the interesting zones from Romania I was speaking about, with, let's say, a better location of the deep geothermal wells in western Romania, in Olt Valley, Kozia, Kalimonești, Ciulata area, and in the Brăila Bay. Now I'm going to move on to present some of the technical solutions which are being used for the implementation of deep and shallow geothermal energy in buildings. The use of geothermal energy follows the so-called Lindell diagram because according to the available temperature of the resource, there are several energy transformations which are recommended. First of all, if we have high temperature geothermal resource, the electricity production is recommended. And then, of course, it is possible to further use the thermal potential of the geothermal energy for food processing, refrigeration plants, because this may be a paradox, but by using heat as driving energy, we can also produce refrigeration in absorption machines. And then we can use further on, as the temperature of the resource decreases, we can use this resource for district heating networks, for apartment building, greenhouses, and we end up in spas and fish farms. This is a very, let's say, interesting and striking slide, showing very briefly some technical possibilities of using geothermal energy in buildings. And this focuses mainly on the use of heat pumps. Heat pumps are thermal machines which are able to move heat from a low temperature heat source to a high temperature heat source. and the driving energy is electricity. And the biggest benefit of heat pumps is that by using only one unit of driving energy, which is most of the times electricity, we can take out from the environment 4 units of renewable energy. So we can provide 5 units of useful energy to the consumer. So from this point of view, these heat pumps are unbeatable from a thermodynamic point of view. This is a brief presentation of different technical solutions used for heat pumps in closed loop systems with vertical ground source heat exchangers, with horizontal loops, or with loops using the heat of lakes and rivers. Of course, the calculation of such system must take into account the energy needs of the building. We should have, as much as possible, balanced systems. If not, we should provide extra cooling possibilities if a building is in a cooling-dominated region, or we should provide solar collectors in order to replenish the heat extracted from the ground in heating-dominated regions. These are the So these are the technical solutions, wastewater, technical solutions for NZEBs and thermal grids, and some real projects in Romania, some showrooms, auto showrooms, and the biggest one is the system from Magurele, which is the largest in Europe. These are some technical schemes with regard to the use of deep geothermal energy for district heating systems. And in Beiuș, the biggest advantage is that the price for such systems, the price for the energy provided to the people is very low. So we can reach up to 80 lei per gigacalorie in Beiuș. I will end up with this statement of Kadri Simpson, Commissioner of Energy of the European Commission. Geothermal energy deserves more attention than in the past. And I hope that we'll find the proper mechanism for collaboration and for financing such projects in Romania. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Gavriliuk, for the presentation. And yes, that's the intention. The second part of this conference will be dedicated to what can we do in the near future in order to make geothermal energy, to bring geothermal energy in attention more than we did in the past. So thank you very much for this very good introduction in the situation in Romania, and also on the technologies that we should be attentive to. I will now give the floor to Mr. Ionuț Tănase. You mentioned earlier that he is quite knowledgeable with one of the projects already finished in Bucharest. So, Mr. Tănase, please, you have the floor.
Thank you for the invitation to hear me. It's okay?
Yes, that's fine.
Yeah. So first of all, thank you for the invitation to be part of this conference. I will start my presentation, which is related to deep geothermal. So I'm refer. Okay. So today I'm refer only to deep geothermal, As classification of geothermal energy, we have two types of geothermal: deep geothermal and shallow geothermal. The content of this presentation is about geothermal resources in Romania, geothermal resources specific to Bucharest Ilfov region, the project implemented by Ilfov County Council at Professor Dr. Agripa Ionescu Emergency Hospital, which is located in Balotești Commune, Ilfov County. The private investment Terme Bucharest, and the future possible in Bucharest Ilfov. Geothermal resources in Romania is associated to low temperature system located in porous permeable formations such as the Pannonian sandstone and the siltstone specific to the Western Plain and for the world valley. The first well for geothermal utilization in Romania was drilled in the year 1885 to a depth of 51 meters, yielding hot water of 49 degrees Celsius. The maximum flow rate of this well is about 195 liters per second, but it was never used at its capacity. The well is still in operation. It's located at Felix Spa, close to the municipality of Oradea. The research for geothermal resources energy purpose began in the early 60s based on the detailed geological program for hydrocarbon resources. So we can assume that the geothermal, the research for geothermal resources began, it's related to the oil crisis from 1680s. Since then, in Romania, where over 250 wells have been drilled with a depth of range of 800 meters to 3,500 meters, through which discovered low enthalpy geothermal resources with a temperature range from 40 degrees Celsius to 120 degrees Celsius. A study conducted by University of Oradea together with Transgix company identified 223 wells drilled after the years of 60. As Mr. Gavriluk mentioned, this is a classical map used by experts in geothermal. So Bucharest Ilfov geothermal reservoirs, and in the western part of Romania, where began the Pannonian basins, which is more let's say used than the other part of Romania. Geothermal resources specific to Bucharest Ilfov region are associated to geothermal reservoir Otopeni or North Bucharest, which is located in the north part of Ilfov County and the north of municipality of Bucharest. The total area of this geothermal reservoir is estimated at 300 square kilometers. This reservoir is located in the northeast of Bucharest and the northeast of Ilfov County. So in this reservoir, through times were drilled 24 wells, of which just 18 with positive results in terms of production or injection. The geological structure of this Reservoir, it's sedimentary rocks, limestones and dolomites with good permeability of and porosity. The temperature gradient could vary from 2.3 to 2.6 degrees per 100 meters, and the wellhead temperature also it is in the range of 58 to 89 degrees Celsius, and this depends on the flow rates at the wellhead temperature. So at Balotest, the temperature reached at 89 degrees Celsius during the production test, and now in operations at Professor Dr. Agripa Enescu Emergency Hospital. But I can assume that in Snagov municipality and Moravlăției, the temperature could reach more than 90 degrees Celsius or 100 degrees Celsius with positive terms to use for electricity in the binary organic ranking cycle. The project harnessing geothermal water resources for district heating, the emergency hospital Agripa Enescu Balotest, was financed within the EA grant 2009-2014. The project was implemented by Ilfov County Council, and the main beneficiary is the hospital, and around 12,000 persons are the main beneficiary of this project annually. The project is in operation since October 2016. The total budget of the project was about 2.1 million euro. The main objective was to harness geothermal water resources from the North Balotest to produce domestic hot water and heat for the hospital. And now our colleagues from the hospital use it also in the balneology for medical purposes. The main investment in this project was rehabilitation and the testing of the well existing Balotest 2684. This was an old well which was rehabilitated and tested. The construction of the well cabin and installing geothermal pump, it's a geothermal pump provided by an Icelandic company, which they are specialists and in this kind of geothermal exploitation. The construction of the geothermal plant fully equipped to produce heat and domestic hot water. Round-trip circuit for heat and hot water, tank storage for geothermal wastewater. So at Balotest, we do not perform reinjection, but in the near future. So in the near future, we intend to use also an old well to reinject geothermal water again in the reservoir from where was produced. It's hose pipes for geothermal wastewater. It's also one of the main investments in this project. So now the wastewater is disposal in natural river, and the consumer connection to the consumers. In the well cabin of Balotest 2684 well, line shaft pump in the Balotest well. It was dimensioned to produce maximum 25 liters per second, but in the previous test, this well was produced, the test provided that this well could produce 35 liters per second. geothermal plant and wastewater storage tank in the back of the geothermal plant exploitation center, where you can see two heat exchangers. We use the two heat exchangers with a total capacity of 5.6 thermal megawatts. One is one is for production heat, and another for domestic hot water. Another project which used geothermal deep resources from this reservoir is the project Terme Bucharest. This is a private investment. It is located very close to our project. The project was about 30 million euros. In this project, it is used the newest well drilled in this reservoir, and also Terme, it's the largest botanical garden in Romania with over 800,000 plants. Now I know that it's closed due to the pandemic COVID-19. Some pictures with Terme Bucharest. And now I would like to mention about possible geothermal projects in Bucharest Ilfov region. We in the previous years we had some discussions with National Institute of Gerontology and Geriatrics Ana Aslan Otopeni to implement together a project similar as the Agripa Ionescu Hospital project. Was some discussion, but due to the political changes, I don't know exactly, but I hope that in the future we'll have good cooperation, because it's I don't know, we at the National Institute Ana Aslan we have a great history, so we can use this history also to promote the future. Another project, it's district heating of the international airport Henricoan de București, București. This is I know that airport Henricoan de Otopeni or Bucharest already signed the licenses for 2 geothermal wells at National Agency for Mineral Resources, and in the near future will start exploration, and I hope in the next year to have an airport heated based on geothermal resources. Another project, it's our project to reinject wastewater from the wells, which is used now at Emergency Hospital Professor Dr. Agripa Ionescu. And the other projects include district heating in the municipality of Otopeni, and other investments in the northeast of Ilfov County at Gruiu, Snagov, Dascălu, and Moravlăsiei, especially for district heating and agriculture based on the diagram Lindal. So I hope that this kind of energy will be promoted and will have some good results in this field. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tanase, for your presentation and for this very interesting set of information on what are the projects near Bucharest. Where most of us know about the projects in Oradea, in Beiuș, and it is very interesting to find out that there are more than one projects in near Bucharest, and also some plans for the future. We will come back to you and try to find out more about what are the challenges in developing more projects like this, and maybe on how the private sector might be involved in accelerating such projects. But also we will have this kind of information and comments from our next speakers. We are now going to a company who is active already in the oil and gas sector and also on the geothermal energy sector. I will now play the recording of the presentation Mr. Călin Drăgoe from Chinook Consulting Services provided to us. He will be also available in the Q&A session for entering into more details. So now we will have this first intervention from Chinook Consulting Services.
Hi. I'm Călin Drăgoe, VP Geosciences with Chinook Consulting. We're an upstream service company that also promotes geothermal development. The oil and gas industry is constantly changing. Over the past few years, it has been under constant pressure to change towards renewable energy and alternative resources. I will not discuss the sources of these pressures, but I will focus instead on using transferable skills and technologies towards these new developments. These are some examples of transferable skills and technologies, primarily developed and perfected in oil and gas, and they can also be applied in alternative resource development. Starting here with drilling methods and continuing with data integration, well data and seismic processing data, then energy and heat production systems, and also very important skills developed in the oil patch that can be directly transferred in emerging industries related to the renewable electricity and alternative resources. We will have a closer look at these technologies and how the skill transfer can be achieved. Alternative resources refer to renewable energy, electricity, as well as other mineral resources that can be used in emerging green economies. There's obviously geothermal energy, developed largely with the same methods used in oil and gas exploration and extraction. I would also like to mention lithium mining and the option to extract it from reservoir brines, or the extraction of phosphates through solution mining with water injection and brine production. I'll also mention carbon dioxide capture and underground storage, CCUS, a method used routinely for tertiary recovery in mature oil reservoirs. I see these emerging developments as an opportunity to apply skills and technology perfected in the petroleum industry. There are a few types and flavors of geothermal developments. I will go through them quickly just for a frame of reference. Conventional hydrothermal systems refer to direct harvesting of hot water or steam from pressurized fluids in fractured and permeable rock, encountered usually at shallow depths, often connected with hot springs. Development in this scenario is relatively straightforward and widely used in select locations where the conditions are met. Comes to mind Iceland or California. Enhanced geothermal systems, EGS, refer to extraction and reinjection of large volume of hot water from deep reservoirs, often stimulated with hydraulic fracturing in order to achieve large water volumes. Of course, fracking is another technology developed in the unconventional hydrocarbon industry. Reservoir evaluation and mapping has to be very precise for this type of development in order to achieve these large water discharges that are needed to make the systems viable. Super hot rock geothermal, it's envisioned for high temperature and high pressure settings where water resides in a supercritical phase that's upwards of 375 degrees. Energy potential is very large, but then so are technical challenges. I'll not discuss this type here, and I don't believe there is much applicability in Romania. And then there's advanced geothermal systems. These are closed-loop systems that harvest heat rather than reservoir water. These systems do not require hydraulic stimulation and generally target hot and dry formations or rock layers with low porosity and permeability, or even impermeable rock. The images displayed here are pictures of a few ongoing projects in Canada. From left to right, we have a classic geothermal doublet with deep vertical production and injection wells. Then a system with alternating horizontal production and injection wells, where hydraulic fracture is also used. And then a closed-loop system acting as a giant underground radiator to harvest the heat of the earth. Our preferred system is the one labeled as advanced. These closed-loop geothermal systems hold a few advantages, such as drastically reduced geological risk, as it doesn't target reservoir fluids or, for that matter, porous or permeable layers. Eliminating the risk of fracking and the accompanying community backlash this entails is another advantage. Then there's no parasitic load as the fluid is moved through the loop based on thermosiphon effect. There are challenges, of course, related to complex well geometry, but as a matter of fact, here lies our experience and expertise. Then heat exchange at reservoir level, that's directly linked to thermal conductivity of the rock. There's potential fluid contamination in open hole, and this is mitigated by sealing drilling muds. There's also high construction cost. The low geological risk and the potential for upscaling are major advantages, in my opinion. So let's move on to some examples of transferable technologies. Directional drilling has a long history in the oil and gas industry. As we know, as oil and gas basins mature, infill drilling and horizontal wells become prevalent, and the directional drilling becomes essential in well execution. Quality has increased in leaps and bounds, from multi-leg wells to extended reach drilling to intersecting well bores. High precision directional drilling is essential in drilling advanced geothermal systems, as they are in development of solution mining for phosphates or injection wells in thin stratigraphic layers. Geosteering or reservoir navigation. It's directly applied in closed-loop geothermal systems or in geothermal designs with horizontal wells. It is based on software that correlates curves measured while drilling with the earth models generated from offset wells. The approach allows drilling in tightly controlled, thin rock layers with increased precision and confidence. The approach is also used in solution mining or drilling of lithium wells, where large fluid discharges are achieved from horizontal wells. Reservoir delineation and precision mapping is paramount for both traditional petroleum and for geothermal exploration, as well as other alternative resources. The leap in precision from 2D to 3D seismic is well known and significantly reduces the geological risk. From this point of view, there is no difference between renewables and fossil fuel exploration. Magnetic ranging technology was initially devised for collision avoidance when drilling wells in close proximity. It was then advanced and perfected in ultra-heavy oil developments in steam-assisted gravitational drainage, SAGD methods, where an injector well is drilled at a precise distance from a horizontal producer well. The same technology is used now for well intersection in dewatering horizontal coal seam gas wells, in phosphate solution mining, or in closed geothermal loops. The images displayed here depict SAGD wells and then a solution mining pad, a coal seam gas with stacked multi-laterals, and a closed-loop geothermal system. All projects where magnetic ranging was deployed. Drilling mud, it's an essential component in well drilling, whether that's for oil and gas, geothermal, or other resources. Managed pressure systems allow us to drill under balance without damaging the geological formations, keeping wellbore integrity and preventing blowouts. Advanced mud systems ensure hole cleaning and formation fluid control. It is also essential in achieving extended reach laterals. Laboratory analysis perfected over the years in the oil and gas industry are easily applied in alternative resources. For example, in geothermal, mineralogic analysis is used to determine thermal conductivity of the rocks at reservoir pressure. Also, geochemical analysis of formation brines identify high lithium concentrations. Gas component analysis from chromatography, spectral analysis, or mass spectroscopy lead to the identification of helium in natural gas, and the list goes on. Semi-permeable membranes are instrumental in extraction and separation of hydrogen, lithium, helium, or for carbon dioxide separation for underground storage. Oil and gas operators often own or sometimes lease infrastructure that can be reused and recycled in the quest for renewables and alternative resources. Well leases can be reused for drilling new wells or for deepening or enlarging existing wells for geothermal energy extraction. Then pipelines can be reused, oil pipelines to transport water for district heating over short distances. Natural gas pipeline to transport hydrogen with current technology up to 10% concentration by volume of hydrogen can be transported without any changes. However, the most valuable asset is the highly skilled workforce that is ready to deploy transferable skills towards new developments. I will end this presentation with this image that shows a closed-loop geothermal well superimposed over Calgary downtown. It goes to show the scale and precision of drilling two wells from surfaces that are 3 kilometers away and intersecting a 25-centimeter wide hole at 2 kilometers below the surface. Well, I would like to thank Energonomics for the opportunity to talk today and also to express my appreciation for the initiative of bringing professionals from very different areas in the same virtual room. Hopefully we can advance these new developments together while at the same time transferring this tremendous expertise achieved in oil and gas and implementing it in geothermal developments and alternative resource extractions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dragoe, for this presentation. Once again, very interesting and very on the hot topic of the day. There are already a few questions that you might answer in a few minutes, but I will now give the floor to Mr. Spencer Coca, President of ROPEPCA and CEO of Mazarin Energy, with some comments on the potential merging of these two sectors, but also on the projects from Mazarin. Please, Mr. Coca, you have the floor.
Yes, hello, good morning. So I do not have a presentation. I'm not showing any slides, not yet. Yeah. They are in the making, but I would like to speak here as the president of ROPETCA, which is the Romanian Association of Oil and Gas Independent Producers. Yeah. As well as the country manager of Mazarin Energy in Romania, which is also an American independent oil and gas company operating fields in Romania. So in my view, I think that there is absolutely no way that geothermal can be developed on a large scale without the involvement of the petroleum industry. And actually, I do believe firmly that this is also the major contribution of the petroleum industry in the future that can be done to really participate in the energy transition towards renewable and sustainable energy sources. And many companies in the petroleum industry have already embarked or are considering embarking into geothermal developments. Colleen knows for sure. In Canada, this is far more advanced. In Romania, we are at the beginning of the road, and Mazarin Energy is currently the only company that has embarked on a project to repurpose some of the existing oil and gas wells in our portfolio for geothermal energy. And looking at Romania, I can say that in Romania, there are in total 60,000 wells drilled over the years. Yeah. More than 99% of these wells are oil and gas wells. So there is a basis available in which to both explore the potential for geothermal energy as well as to produce eventually geothermal energy through. In my view, drilling of new deep geothermal wells in Romania at the current moment is simply too expensive, and it's probably not economic. We know, I mean, there was this latest and famous example in Ilfov County in Corbanca, the Termes Spa. The well drilled to 3,100 meters of depth. The cost was very high. And we know this cost, they are very similar to the oil and gas wells. At the moment, the cheapest you can drill in Romania is for about 1,000 euro per meter. Yeah. So a 3,000 meter well, deep well is at least 3 million euro, if not more, with all the completion and so on. Therefore, we think that the best way forward and the far more economic attractiveness of projects is given by repurposing existing wells. Yeah? And there are plenty of wells that have been abandoned or suspended in Romania, all over the places. Many of them, they are in this areas with high geothermal gradients, which we know. I mean, we've seen the map of the Pannonian Basin. All the names that are popping up there are actually oil and gas fields. Yeah. You know, Jimbolia, Lovren, all of this in the Turnu area. Further north to Oradea, there is Cadea, Diosig. All these places are also oil and gas fields, and there is actually no way around, yeah, but to join forces, yeah. In Ilfov County, where Mazarin Energy has 3 fields, actually, we're operating just in the outskirts of Bucharest. They are on the Bucharest Ring Road. We are considering really stopping the oil production in these fields completely, and use the fields for geothermal projects. Yeah. And we have formed an alliance with a company from the UK specialized in new technology in geothermal, new technology that is using basically closed loop systems, yes, as Colleen mentioned, and with heat pumps that are placed downhole inside the well, and where you can have a system in place that is functioning based on one single well. Yeah, so you don't require any more well for injection and the well for production, but have everything in one closed loop inside one single well. And we do believe that this is the future because it's simply from a cost perspective far more economic to use such a system than to start to drill injection wells, for example, that are very expensive. Yeah. I think that Bucharest is actually blessed with this resource nearby. We do believe that the geothermal aquifer in Ilfov County is not fully explored. And actually, we do believe that this aquifer extends further to the east. So towards the highway to the Black Sea, in that part, Cernica, Calderaro, that area. And we think that with the goodwill of all the parties involved, especially also, as we know, the politicians, yeah, and the authorities, this energy can be harnessed for the benefit of a large town, yeah, and a large urban area where we also do have industry. Yeah, we shouldn't forget that there is a lot of industrial consumers located on the Bucharest Ring Road that can benefit from this energy source. Last but not least, we do see also going forward in the future and looking at the oil fields that are present in Romania, of course, the vast majority of oil fields are in more remote locations, and they are not necessarily near large towns with district heating needs. Therefore, probably a different market needs to be sourced for the geothermal energy. And we do believe that such a market to be explored is the agricultural market, and there are more and more agricultural needs and purposes, yeah, where geothermal energy can add value. We know that at least the southern part of Romania is heavily biased towards agriculture. Yeah, there is a lot of agriculture in Baragan area in the southern part of Romania, where there are also oil and gas fields that can be converted or at least explored for geothermal energy. The good news is that technology advances. And if we look at geothermal technology from 10, 20 years ago and what is possible nowadays, I mean, there is a huge difference, yeah, leaps forward. And I think that what we see at the moment is that there is not anymore such a need for high downhole temperatures in order to produce geothermal energy. So the technology moves forward, and you know, you can have. We are testing now some new technology where you know, downhole temperatures of 40 and 50 degrees Celsius in a wellbore are sufficient, yeah, in order to have geothermal energy on surface that can be marketed, yeah. And if this technology advances, then of course this will make many fields attractive, yeah, for conversion into geothermal energy. And I think that Romania, at least in Europe, can play a leading role in this aspect because of having so many wells and having also geothermal gradients in some areas that can be used. I mean, we are not necessarily blessed as a country with, you know, where solar power or wind energy are, you know, the best places to be done in Europe. Yeah. But on the other hand, I do believe that in terms of geothermal energy, we can have really a leading role in Europe. Yeah. This is from my side.
Thank you very much, Mr. Spencer Coca, for your presentation and for the ideas that you shared with us, and also for opening so many direction to dialogue for the next few minutes. I noted myself 4-5 questions, and there are also a few sent by our friends watching this conversation online. So we'll get back very soon to these questions and to an open dialogue. I opened this conversation pointing out to the aims of this meeting. We try to understand a little bit better what are the direction to which the oil and gas sector might go into in the near future. And I mentioned geothermal, renewables like wind or solar, also hydrogen, and also I talked about digitalization. I will invite now the representative of Huawei present today with us, Mr. Zhu Chang, Senior Solution Manager at Huawei EBG Global Energy Unit, for his initial intervention, and then we go to dialogue. Please, Mr. Chang, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you, Gabriel. Yeah, so everyone could see my screen, right?
Yes, everything's fine.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. So it's been a great honor for me to present on this great event. Actually, this is the first time I have dialogue with Romania. And before joining Huawei last year, I worked for CMPC over 10 years as a senior petroleum engineer and digital oil field specialist. So Huawei is a leading global ICT product and solution provider. To Huawei, oil and gas industry is always one of the most important markets we are focused, and we have been consistently trying to understand and analyze the major business demands and challenges of the industry players, and support them to a more solid and thrive performance by using the newest technologies. So today, I'd like to share our thoughts on how digital technologies or digital transformation could help oil and gas sector to fit in the new normal era, especially the post-COVID-19 recession and recovery. And since the time is limited, I may focus more on the success use cases rather than the technology itself. So let's get started. So firstly, why oil and gas needs digital transformation? So we are all clear about this. There is no doubt that the oil and gas industry has been entered a completely changed landscape. The COVID-19 induced recession has resulted in the sharpest downturn in the energy and oil demand in our living memory. So on the bright side, the baseline is still very solid for our industry. So the global economy in 2045 will be more than double the size it was in 2019. So, but the changes are far more than that. So the oil peak demand is looking forward to be reached around 2030. And the renewables and the Paris Agreement. So for example, China has announced that by 2030, it will reduce carbon emission intensity by over 65%. And the share of non-fossil in primary energy consumption will increase to 25% by then. So furthermore, targeting net zero emission by 2060 So all these kind of changes have introduced a true challenge for oil and gas industry. So then we have to facing how to producing the crude oil and refined products at a lower cost to stay competitive and improve the performance, accelerate first oil or gas for green assets, or prolong the life of the mature ones. And maybe the most important one of the coming years to meet the environment regulations. And by facing these challenges, the major oil and gas companies made the same choice, take digitalization as a key to the next chapter of this industry, a substantial and greener business. So especially when the advancement in technologies and the falling cost of digitalization and the ever widening connectivity of devices provide a real competition bidding opportunity to oil and gas companies who play the digital revolution right. So when we are committed with a transformation, the methodology is far more important than technology itself. Even though Huawei is a technology or product solution provider, but since we are committed to this journey, based on our own digital transformation experience and the experience from the collaboration with our clients, a quite universal methodology has been proposed to support oil and gas companies' digital transformation journey. So it's summarized as one vision from the top management, the commitment of the CEOs, and two drivers, means the business drivers and the technology driver, to collaborate together to drive forward. And the three key process from the planning. So we need one top-down framework or blueprint to mapping the digital transformation of the whole organization and includes all business sections. So workflows, meanwhile focusing on quick win scenarios to add value. Then proceed the process with continuous building and operating. So, and we need two guarantees. So when we talk about digital transformation, the digital preparation of the organization and the talent are the keys. Actually, I think over 60% of the companies trying to do the digital transformation but failed because of their talent lack. They are really lack of a talent, digital talents. The last is our digital foundation. So to support all the above and the key enabler to initiate the digital transformation of the oil and gas industry. So this digital foundation includes four aspects: the connectivity, the digital platform, data enablement, and artificial intelligence. So in the next slides, I will give a brief introduction about what Huawei can contribute to each aspect. So first and foremost, the ICT infrastructures, the connectivity. So Huawei as a global leading ICT product, the technology provider. So this is what we do for decades. So Huawei mainly provides the network connections, IT infrastructures, and the platform. So in the field, Huawei can provide a wired and wireless multiple connection methods, like industrial Ethernet, the wireless 4G, microwave, etc. So it's worth mentioning that the ELTE, like 4G wireless broadband network, can really carry a variety of services on one network. So such as our SCADA data, voice trunking, intelligent inspection, video surveillance, and harmful gas detection like that to promote operation efficiency and our HSE management. So at the OT level, so Huawei can implement video surveillance, video conferencing, the GIS services, etc., and build an intelligent operation center to help our customer achieve the panoramic production command and efficient collaborative operations. So here is a use case. So it's a world's first ELD network for the offshore field. That's what we did in Norway with our partners. So like lots of brown oil fields, this field with lots of oil wells and tankers without network connections. And the network they were using is a low speed, cannot support the business operation, or their stuff, especially stuff on the platform, their life demand. And some real-time data, such as well production data, or using the satellite transmission. We all know how expensive that is. So our solution with TempNet provides the LTE broadband network for access and trunking with only 10 millisecond latency. So the wide network coverage is could reach 37 kilometers to cover the offshore platform. So the edge bandwidth could reach 2 megabits download link. So the value added is very obvious. So we realized the connection of wells and tankers, the fundamental enabler of demand or unmanned operation. It is a huge reducer on the operation and maintenance cost. And we improved the communication and operation efficiency by over 20%, and the staff safety, and enriched people's life on the platform. And now something quite new, the 5G smart campus. This is a use case or innovation test we did with Shell and other partners, including ABB, the robotics providers. So we all know 5G is a huge upgrade from 4G. The broadband's the bandwidth could increase by 25 times, and with a much lower latency, like 1 millisecond, and the high connection capacity. So now we tested 4 use cases under this project, including the robotic inspection, the connected sensors, and the connected workers with 5G and AR equipment like the helmet. And for this connected mobile workers, we are also using in like Aramco, ANOC, all these major industry players. And of course, the predictive maintenance costs with the 5G network, we could have like continuous, really real-time, high-quality data for all the wells and the facility equipments that could help our big data or machine learning use applications to realize a true predictive maintenance to really draw down our OPEX. And that's the connectivity. Now let's discuss the digital platform. We all know that the oil and gas industry is definitely facing the great challenge, which require us to accelerate the E&P process and further promote the CapEx and OPEX executive efficiency, protect our profitability. So however, when we take actions, there are serious challenges, of course. We know that while like seismic survey workload is ongoing, huge amount of data are generated by petabits. So the follow-up 3D seismic processing or high-resolution GNG modeling and reservoir simulation and big data AI applications require super powerful computing capability and ensure the high precision. So meanwhile, the data security is always a vital concern for our industry. So in this case, a dedicated cloud is designed to fulfill all these requirements, which provides the elastic computing power, and the cloud services will meet the data security regulation at the same time. So this is a use case from a major NOC in Middle East area, one of the largest crude oil producers and explorers. This company is targeting on promote its reserves and production. It is undertaking the largest 3D seismic survey and eager to accelerate subsurface studies. So their choice of the Huawei HPC and storage has already supported to improve 45% performance in the reservoir simulation and the development plan study, and while supporting 5 years computing scaling up. So next one, so that's something interesting on Huawei Cloud. So I will introduce how it provides the AI capabilities. I'll give a general introduction by this slide. So the foundation level is the data. Once the data collected, streaming into our system, we can use our computing power based on the AI chips and other hardware, then to release the capability of our own deep learning or machine learning framework. So it has 3 parts. The CNN is like working like a bridge between the framework and the hardware. So it's more like operator level. So once we get into the framework, that's a mind sport. So could be analogous to TensorFlow by Google or PyTorch by Facebook. The training framework is where the developers, programmers to use a language like Python to write programs. So then on the top level, that's our model arts and the knowledge graph. So could help our developers or even domain experts to develop or deploy their AI applications much easier. So for example, Huawei spotted CNPC, the China National Petroleum Company, built its cognitive computing platform. 5 applications, including the log interpretation, first break picking, some seismic interpretation, pump status diagnosis, and the decline curve analysis, weather cut prediction. These 5 applications were selected and developed in the first batch for phase 1 of this project. So these AI applications really significantly reduce the manual effort, and the accuracy of results could reach over 90%, perfectly comparable with our experts, human work. So after the POC, CNPC estimated the total annual gain will be over $60 million by a full deployment of only these 5 applications across the whole company. So, yeah, okay. So now I will introduce this end-to-end solution on the field. So we all know the wells is the key asset for oil and gas. So after the wells are drilled and commissioned, only one objective is to optimize their performance. So which means more oil and gas production and lower OPEX. So together with our partners, So mainly in the industry, mainly the industry application developers. So we provide a end-to-end solution from the connection on the field, the edge computing, IoT platform, and the center ENP cloud. And the domain applications, some AI machine learning applications to analyze the well performance and to do the optimization autonomously. So this really enable the 24/7 continuous autonomous closed loop well optimization to release a lot of manpower. And the use in CNPC Changqing oil field demonstrated a 3 to 5% oil production increase, the unmanned operations, and around 25% energy consumption, especially for the artificial lift wells. And this is the intelligent or machine vision. So we are familiar about this. I won't devote too much time to it. So this is the last page. So facing a challenge in new era, it will not easy. So based on our technology and solutions, so intelligent digital twin of our domain business will be built and continuously evolving to support the industry digital transformation journey and achieve the strategic targets in the full value chain. So for oil and gas industry, it means more profitable upstream, more sustainable and economic product supply, and more valuable downstream. So thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zhu Chang, for your presentation. And I will very soon come back to you for more information and explaining on the subject matter that you had. We are now visible, all of us, for our audience, and I thank you now, each of you, our invited guest today, for your contribution. And there are two, maybe three types of questions that we received during this 1 hour and a half. I will start with those which are more related to the public authorities, and maybe Mr. Gaveliuk, Mr. Tanase might give us some insight on this side. The question that I had in mind, even from the very beginning, and also I received from Mr. Miklos Antic, sounds like this: what is the main obstacle to upscale geothermal development in Bucharest? So one of the challenges, what is the biggest in your view, Mr. Tanase, maybe based on your experience in Balotești, also Mr. Gaveliuk, based on your overall knowledge on Romania on geothermal projects, please.
Hello. The main obstacle in developing geothermal projects in our region, it's related about the licenses for the wells. So we use in this area, we mainly use the old wells, which are drilled by Foradex, which was a drilling company, which was and it was financed by Romanian state budget. In the 1920s, the Foradex was at the base. Foradex was a state company. After privatization, the Foradex have the rights of the wells, the rights which main let's say the ownership of these wells, and the main problem is that the foradex do not have let's say finance resources to develop these wells. So these wells were abandoned, and it's a problem to obtain the licenses from the National Agency for Mineral Resources. You have to provide that you have the right to use the wells. You have to use the wells in terms of property about the land, with, where is located the wells, and the wellhead. So it's a kind of it's quite complicated to use it these old wells. Some of them are located in the private lands, and you do not have access to it. So this is the main problems from which we do not have this kind of geothermal development on a large scale.
I see. So 3 ideas: licenses, ownership, and access to land. Please, Mr. Gavrilyuk, what's your view on this question?
Yes, it's a very good point, and this is, I believe, one of the most important obstacles against the development of deep geothermal systems in Romania, because it's the regulation issue. Because as Mr. Tanase said, it's a conflict between, let's say, ownership rights of the drilling companies who are owning these wells, and the possibility of using the geothermal resource beneath the surface, which should be freely available to the communities above ground. And this is a regulation topic which Romanian National Agency for Mineral Resources and also the government and the parliament should solve. And if this is not solved, the local authorities cannot make any use of these wells located on their territory and close to the owners that may benefit from the resource. So this is so I suppose that, and I would suggest that all the involved actors should come to a discussion table and harmonize both of the interests of the owners of those boreholes, but also the interests of the local authorities, because otherwise the objectives of European Union policy with regard to energy and renewable resources cannot be accomplished. So this is the most important issue.
Thank you, Mr. Gavrilyuk, for your perspective. Mr. Coca, it was one of the questions that I had in mind listening to your presentation earlier. Do you have to be reauthorized, re-licensed by NAMR in order to change the scope of your activities or not? And maybe a comment on the biggest challenge raised by the gentlemen before.
Yes, I mean, I think that the current legislation in Romania doesn't specify all these details, and it needs to be done pretty soon. I mean, there is one thing if you exploit a resource. In other words, if you bring, for example, hot water to surface, which is considered a different mineral resource compared to oil. And there is another thing to use just an existing oil well and circulate something inside the well. Yeah, that so you don't take anything out from the ground other than the heat itself. Yeah. And I think that at least here in Romania, there is no legislation to clarify these aspects, and it will need to be done, yeah? Depending on the technology used. Yeah? So if we extract the water out of the ground, and this is clearly a different type of mineral resource exploitation, so it requires a different authorization. In other words, a different concession agreement, because in the end, the resources belongs to the state, and all the operators are in the end just holding concession agreements for a limited period of time, it's clearly different than oil and gas. Yeah. So
just a short interruption.
Asset, yeah?
Just a short interruption. Yes, here. This could be to some conflicts between a potential buyer of the concession for mineral water and the owner of the well itself, a company which invested probably in having that well digged.
No, clearly not. Because assets belonging to an oil and gas company that has a concession right cannot be transferred to a third party doing a different type of exploitation. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So you cannot transfer an oil and gas well to another energy company that has a different type of concession agreement. And usually the concession agreements do not overlap. Yeah. So there are very rare cases of overlapping concession agreements. Yes, they do exist. For example, mining. Yeah, so there are quarries on top of oil fields. Yeah, but so far, to my knowledge, there is no geothermal concession agreement that is overlapping with an oil and gas concession.
But that might be very well the case.
True. It might.
And the whole idea is to use the existing assets, the wells, existing wells. Yeah. Okay. I interrupt you, but please. There was the second part of your comment that on using only the heat in a well, not the water.
Yes. Yeah. And this is basically a new technology where you basically inject water from surface, you heat it up downhole, and you extract it. Yeah, so you're not using, in fact, the aquifer itself, yeah, in the ground, and that one stays untouched. Yeah, and this is especially the case in oil and gas fields where you might have problems with contamination of hydrocarbons. Yeah. That are inside the wellbore, and you can't clean them up properly in order to extract water that is not contaminated with hydrocarbons to surface. Yeah, so therefore you can just construct a closed loop system, yeah, totally tight, that you introduce into an oil and gas well, and inject water from surface that you just heated up downhole, and you use just the temperature in itself of the formation to heat up the water.
Is it water or any other fluid? There are fluids that are better.
Yes, can be any other fluid as well. Yes, of course.
And that would be the case for around 50,000 wells in Romania, if I calculated correctly.
Yeah, probably not. Yeah, probably not. I mean, not, but a large portion of them can be used. Yeah, many of the wells do have integrity issues. Yeah, they are very old, and that's one of the aspects that needs to be taken into account. The status of the wellbore and the hardware inside the well is in many cases unknown. We just know it's old, and it can fail, and the repair of such wells is more costly than drilling new wells. Yeah? Mm-hmm. But the selection can be made out of all these wells very clearly, and conversion of such wells into geothermal applications is certainly possible.
Thank you for your comment. Mr. Călin Drăgoe, please, if you can have a comment about what do you know about different jurisdiction in Canada, for example? How are the things solved here in this issue? Ownership, land access, licensing. And I know that you have also a question directed to Mr. Tanase, please.
Yeah, so one thing I would comment is I'm in a way surprised, in another way not that surprised that regulatory and regulations are the main obstacle. I would have thought cost, but again, I'm not surprised because that's what I've heard over and over from our discussions with other stakeholders. So it always came down to regulation. And well, in this regard, maybe it would have been good for this meeting and for upcoming meetings to invite people from NAMBRA, from ANRM. I think they are the organization that is supposed to fix this, and it has to be fixed. Now, you mentioned that it's a different mineral, right? Water has a different regime, oil has a different regime, and I wouldn't be surprised if at some point they would come up with a royalty for even just the heat. And you know what, I wouldn't mind that, as long as you have a framework of reference. That's something that you can work with. What you can't work with is the lack of regulations and the Wild West, where nobody does anything because they don't know what they're facing.
Yes, from what I know, there are dozens of requirements for geothermal concession onto NAMR table, and waiting for a decision. A new leadership for the agency for a few months now, and in the making a new law changing probably 16, very significantly the statute, transforming this agency into an authority maybe in the next few months. Please, Mr. Dragoe, the question for Mr. Tanase.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you have a timeline for the development in the Otopeni airport, if that project is going ahead and when.
Sorry, could you repeat?
Do you have a timeline for execution or for going ahead with the Otopeni project?
No, I just mentioned about this project because I know this is performed. It is the studies were conducted by airport Otopen. We are not involved in this project, but I would like to mention it because it is an important project. To harness this kind of energy in our region. So I know that they signed the licenses for 2 old wells at the National Agency for Mineral Resources, but I do not have a time line for execution the project. The project will be similarly to Paris to the Paris Orly airport, which is also heated with geothermal resources. I know the temperature in Otopen area and also at airport Otopen. It's around 70 degrees Celsius. But I would like to mention that these temperatures, it's not a defined temperature because it is related to the reports at the end of the drilling, which was conducted more than 20 years ago, and we didn't know the time for to inject the flow rate of the water. We do not have this kind of data to have existing situations or this kind of As I mentioned in my presentation at Balotest, at the from the start of the project, we assumed that that well could produce hot water at 80 degrees Celsius. But now the well could produce 89 degrees Celsius. So it is
It is
about
a happy situation
yes,
in
yes.
this case.
But yes, yes.
Mr. Tănase, another question for you, if you are aware on this subject. Mrs. Olivia Comșa asks, is it possible to extend the Eli geothermal capability to assure heating for Măgurele community, if you are familiar with the subject?
The at Eli Nuclear Physics, they use shallow geothermal. I do not have this kind of data to answer, but I think Mr. Gavrilyuk could offer some details about shallow geothermal at Măgurele Eli. Because
thank you. Okay.
As I mentioned, we have two types of geothermal energy, deep and shallow. So I'm more related to deep, and I can provide more information about deep geothermal than shallow geothermal.
I see. Thank you. I give the floor to Mr. Gavrilyuk. He also had a comment on on some ideas presented by Mr. Spencer Coca. Please.
Thank you very much. I'd like to comment a little bit on the speech of Mr. Spencer Coca. I think we should narrow down from the number of thousands of boreholes drilled in Romania for gas and oil. We should narrow down to those boreholes which are providing geothermal energy specifically. And if we are doing this, we come down to a number of about 240, 250 boreholes, out of which about 90 to 100 could be used. So that means if we think of a doublet for a geothermal district heating system, that means that we could build up about 40 to 50 medium-sized geothermal district heating systems, which is quite impressive. This is the possibility. So we should think, let's say, at grass level from the geothermal point of view, and the possibility of using. Of course, we should think about the costs and about the financing possibilities. So out of this whole range of technical possibilities, we should focus on the feasible projects which can be built up in the financial mechanisms provided by the European Union and by the national financing possibilities. So this could be done, in my perspective, from a practical point of view, and this would also reach the targets set by the European policy, to which Romania is very much connected. Okay, so
we'll come back to the issue of money and financing, but please a few words on the question from Ms.
Măgurele.
Yes.
So we are very much acquainted with this topic, because we also did some articles regarding monitoring data from 2017 for the geothermal system over there. And this topic of providing heating and cooling to the neighborhood was also, to the surrounding neighborhood of Măgurele city was discussed, but this is not allowed by the financing program through which the investment in Măgurele was done. Okay, so for about, if I remember well, 5 years after completion of the investment. They are not allowed to do anything else outside the frame of the initial financing contract. So this is the topic there. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I will switch now to Mr. Zhu Chang with a question which is kind of a recurrent one in our in Energenomics conferences, because we are talking very often about digitalization in the energy sector too, in the oil and gas sector too. My question is related to this ecosystem that you presented earlier, which can be sort of intimidating. Is this available and suitable only for multi-billion dollars companies, or can it be applied and used by, let's say, smaller companies, talking about hundreds of millions, let's say, in revenues annually? And that would be the general question, but also more precisely, how do you start? I suppose that you start with some kind of a project, pilot project, in order to prove some capabilities and bring some revenues and new revenues for the client. But give us an example.
Yeah, that's great questions, Gabriel, and very important. I think the digital transformation is not just about the industry giants. It's for the whole industry, the big players and small players. And I think for most of examples, it's even more important for the small players or initial or startup companies. Because in this age, if you start up from a digital mind, that will change everything. And for these giants, because the mindset, it's the most difficult part to change. So the process is very, very slow and difficult. You will meet a lot of obstacles in the organization. Because as I introduced, the digital will build everything into a platform, from the data to your workflow to your whole enterprise operating. So the organization, the authority, the mechanism to running a company will be totally different. So for the giants, it's very hard. So how do we start this? For example, I think Huawei is a very good example in digital transformation, because Huawei, initially we are a product manufacturer, not just IT. We are different from Facebook or Amazon or these digital native companies. We manufacture products. So when we started our digital transformation journey, we actually started from a separate a discipline like the financing. It's quite easier and quite easy to change the mindset and set up a example or a role model for the whole organization. And when you select a priority targets, you're gonna have to make sure it's success. This will drive the landscape change for your whole company. So you have to make sure your pilot is a success. And every step we will start from like a proof of concept, a pilot, and scale up to this whole discipline. And it costs for the companies, when you do some transformation, that means risks in the meantime, right? So you need to make sure your business continuity will not be an impact. So this is a general steps. That's why I introduced when we talk about transformation, this kind of strategy, this kind of methodology is more important than the technology itself. Of course, the technology you need to select from the markets, from best ones, because now the technology is really affordable for both big and small players. So that's my answer. Thank you.
Thank you for your contribution. And I move now to the subject of financing and the costs for projects that we talked about. But I will start with by saluting Mr. Miklos Antic, and thank you, Mr. Gavriluk, for briefing me in. He is the present-day president of the European Geothermal Energy Council, a Romanian from Oradea. So thank you, Mr. Antic, for being here with us and for the comments and questions you sent us. I talked about earlier about this first question from Mr. Antic Paz, but also he says, and I quote, "The local communities should take over the ownership of the resources on their territories." And I think that is also the direction that the authorities, the government and the NAMR are moving in recent months, at least in part. I know that for the oil and gas concessions, it is this idea that local communities to benefit in part from the operations taken on their soil. But I will also read the comment from Mr. Antic. He says 1 barrel of hot water costs $0.5. and 1 barrel of oil is $72. How could oil and gas technologies be transferred to geothermal whilst maintaining reasonable capex of geothermal production infrastructure? I suppose that one part of the question is that we are using more or less the same infrastructure. That would be maybe a part of the question. Mr. Spencer Coca, please, a comment here, and then on the prices I go back to Călin Drăgoe.
Yes, as I mentioned also before, it's all about economics in the end. Yeah, and the comment is very well that 1 barrel of water is far less than 1 barrel of oil. But not always, actually. So last year it was
depends the country or where you are. No?
Exactly. And I think the only solution at this moment in time and in this current market situation is to use the existing facility and infrastructure. I mean, drilling wells, especially deep wells, specifically for geothermal energy, as a private investor, yes, I'm not talking now using subventions and funds, is at this moment in time not economic. And I know that in Terme, in Corbanca, which was a private ocean investment there, indeed with some subventions by the Romanian state, but a large portion was private investment. They will need many more years to recoup that money. Yeah, so at the moment, especially now, also due to the pandemic, where everything was closed, the loss in revenue is tremendous. Yeah, in Terme.
I will come back to you, Mr. Coca, with some comments on your plans in geothermal area. But I am curious if Mr. Călin Drăgoe can tell us a few words about the costs in Canada, in other places of the world. We are starting from this 1,000 euros per meter in drilling. We heard earlier from Mr. Spencer Coca. Can you confirm this is the price all around the world, or maybe not?
Yeah, well, depending on well depth, it can be more or less. But I totally agree. I think there's 3 parts to the financing. One is geothermal well can pay off in 15 to 50 years, whereas oil and gas well pays off in 1 or 2 years, let's say. So you can't really compare them. So in order to pay for geothermal, you have to start with the government grants. I don't think there's any way around it. But there are some other things to consider. One is a green certificate or green bonds. Whether we like it or not, those things are coming, and those have to be factored in the economics of geothermal. And as Spencer mentioned, it's using old infrastructure or previously built infrastructure. and that has another aspect to it. When you have wells that are not producing anymore, by converting them into geothermal, you basically turn abandonment liability into something that is maybe producing money. I think there's a lot of interest from companies like OMV Petrom and Romgas to look into things like this, not only from Master, but also from the state-owned companies in Romania.
Thank you for a comment. I go back to Mr. Coca with a question. Taking into consideration all this, we have merely touched in a few minutes on financing and costs. Do you think that geothermal might be a real solution for district heating for Bucharest, for example? At least in part,
Yes.
we are at the moment when we are thinking about rebuilding, redesigning the district heating in Bucharest, because there are so many problems, and maybe that would be a part of the solution.
Yes, certainly we do believe this, at least from a technical point of view. Nobody has run economics on this, and it could be part of the entire discussion we have in Bucharest with Elsen, Radet, and all this.
And especially for the northern part of the city.
Yes, yeah. So technically, I do believe that geothermal energy can be harnessed for at least a large portion of Bucharest for district heating. I do not know whether this is commercially viable, and it needs to be checked. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And another question also about the potential in regards with the smaller cities, communes nearby in Ilfov. I suppose that, for example, this Green Deal arrangement or this resilience plan should provide with some financing for these small communities to move from burning woods, for example, to using geothermal energy. How do you see this kind of approach, and is it too late to have a thing like this on the table?
I think it's not too late. It's actually never too late. And indeed, in Romania, especially in rural areas, the heating is in many places still done on wood basis. Yeah, so burning wood, which is from an environmental perspective the worst case scenario. And European politicians in Brussels, they are saying they don't want to even consider gas as a transition energy.
Which is the third better, no? Wood,
exactly,
coal,
so,
gas.
Exactly. So we will have to make the transition from wood directly into whatever, hydrogen. Yeah. So I want to see this happening. Yeah. So I do believe that transiting from wood burning into geothermal energy is possible, it's viable, and it's also something available. First of all, it can be done, and we should do this in Romania.
I see. Will we have some problems here with distributing the thermal energy? There is this huge discussion on new gas pipelines that might or not be supported by European monies, but I suppose that for thermal energy we would also need maybe not so many new drills, new wells, yes, but also some forms of distribution networks.
Yes, this is clearly probably the biggest hurdle, to bring the energy to the client. Yeah, so bringing it to surface is probably the easiest part. Distributing the energy and monetizing the energy from the wellhead onwards, to the end consumer is probably the biggest challenge.
Thank you for your comments. If any of you gentlemen would like to add something, we are closing the ending of this conversation. I thank Mr. Zhu Chang for being here with us. He already left as another meeting awaits him. Mr. Gavriliuk, please.
Sorry, so I'd like to add some comments about the distribution system, so and financing of geothermal wells. It is quite obvious that the costs for the wells is the biggest cost within such an geothermal project, and we should make use of the financing which is available through present day projects. If we have a look at the projects which were implemented in Romania, in Beiuș and in Balotești, all these projects were supported through subsidies by different programs, especially EED grants. So because these projects were financing, for example, in Beiuș, drilling the injection borehole, and so this is what is expected to be done also in Balotești for a new reinjection well. So we should make use of the available funding for covering the initial capital costs through these subsidies, and only in this way the projects will be viable from an economic point of view. Second, when we come to the district heating networks and about Bucharest, such geothermal district heating systems are very much, let's say, recommended for a smaller number of inhabitants, about, let's say, 10,000 inhabitants, 15,000 inhabitants, because in these cases, the network system is, let's say, manageable. Because this is the point.
It's smaller, and you do not lose the heat in such.
Should be, let's say, split into smaller systems, which can be much more easier manageable. So these are my comments with regard to district heating.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll invite you all to have a final intervention, and maybe around this question. How do you think that the private sector might get involved in promoting geothermal solutions? We talked about these 2 hours. The money, the decision, the regulation, it's in the public sector, of course, or most of the money, so some of the money. But what can the private sector do in order to support such projects?
Yeah, I think we have we need to have projects, shovel-ready projects. Come up with proposal, give them forward, and see if we can raise money for that. If we have a plan, we might change it, but we have to start with a clear plan.
Okay, so a first step, and then we'll see what else. Thank you, Călin Drăgoe. Any other comment? Yeah. Please, Mr. Coca.
Yes, as a final comment, I mean, if we look around the globe, well, there are successful geothermal projects. They are successful because all the people, all the parties involved, all the stakeholders, be it private and authorities, they were joining forces, and they have really pulled together in order to make this happen. So they worked smart together to harness geothermal energy for the benefit of the population, of everybody in there. And I think that this is what needs to be done. So this is not a disparate effort, of private entities on one side and government on the other side, or authorities on the other side. So only by joining forces together, these projects can be made successful. as is the case in for example, in Ilfov County, what we've seen here. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes, please, Mr. Ionuț Tănase, based on your previous experience, what can be done, starting from the private sector, let's say, in order to have more strength behind those projects?
So at the final, I would like to mention that in Bucharest Ilfov region, so the exploration, and after that exploitation needs to be done with reinjection. In our project, we use a natural river for wastewater, but is not a good solution for long term. So the future projects needs to be done in a doublet: production and injection well.
That's one of the lessons learned.
Yes, this is a lesson learned from the previous project, and I know at airport the company obtained the license for two wells. One will be used for production and another for reinjection. So this is a benefit also for the environment and also for the geothermal resources as a part of sustainable development for the next generation. So the sedimentary reservoirs do not have the same characteristics as the volcanic systems. So the permeability, porosity of these reservoirs are different, and the natural recharge of sedimentary basins are not to zero, but are less than the volcanic systems. So in all these kind of sedimentary basins, exploitations from this needs to be performed the reinjection.
Thank you, Mr. Tănase, for your comments. A final word from Mr. Gavriliuk, please.
Well, thank you very much for this opportunity, and it was quite a very interesting discussion and a very interesting event, bringing together so many actors in this field. And I'm confident that only by struggling very hard we can push forward this sector in Romania, and we can bring together specialists from different fields, from the oil and gas, from drilling specialists, but also people working in the building sector, in the energy sector, and of course local authorities and central authorities to build up a regulation framework which may enable the implementation of such projects, which are quite beneficial for Romania finally, and for the inhabitants. If we also think about the environment, green energy, CO2 emission reduction, and also we should also think about the energy costs and the energy poverty syndrome, which may very well occur, thinking about the elimination of subsidies for energy, which is due very soon. So it was a very good opportunity to bring these topics on the table in order to be solved. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. A final word from myself now, and I'll switch to Romanian for this closing. Mulțumesc așadar vorbitorilor, partenerilor care au făcut posibil această întâlnire. Se vede pe ecran acum Huawei și Nu Consulting Services, GeoExchange în calitate de partener strategic. Din partea noastră, toată deschiderea pentru a vorbi în continuare despre aceste teme, Părerea mea este că suntem într-un moment cum n-a mai fost unul mai bun pentru acest tip de energie. Avem perspectiva din partea comunității europene pe ceea ce înseamnă regenerabil și fără poluare. Avem surse de finanțare relativ la îndemână. Unele dintre ele chiar ne sunt propuse cu o viteză foarte mare și probabil că sunt proiecte care se pot face în câțiva ani, dacă vorbim de cele deja începute sau pe scheletul acestora. Avem de asemenea tehnologia și know-how, avem istoria și mă bucur să aflu că, iată, o companie importantă din Oil&Gas are planuri clare în această zonă, va urma probabil OMV Petrom și altele în momentul în care jucătorii importanți din Oil&Gas încep să vadă și să acționeze în această linie a potențialului important de sinergie între Oil&Gas și geothermal, sunt convins că lucrurile încep să se miște cu o viteză mai mare. Vom fi aici să relatăm lucrurile, așa cum vom fi alături de dumneavoastră în a aduce în atenția autorităților mai devreme, mai repede aceste subiecte pentru a încerca să obținem din partea acestora lucrurile de care avem nevoie, o claritate în legislație, o direcție strategică, eventual un suport mai clar și la nivel local sau oriunde acest tip de sprijin ar fi necesar. Mulțumesc foarte mult așadar, acum le mulțumesc și celor care au fost alături de noi și care urmează să vadă înregistrarea acestei conversații în YouTube sau în Facebook sau în LinkedIn în săptămânile următoare. Urmează din partea noastră să creionăm câteva idei în câte un articol dedicat fiecărui vorbitor și cred că prindem și numărul viitor al revistei la Energy Strategy Summit pe 17 iunie, atenție, dată schimbată de pe 8 iunie, pe 17 iunie așadar lansăm numărul al doilea al revistei Energonomics și acolo vom avea și câteva pagini dedicate energiei geotermale. Atât pentru astăzi, noi avem următorul eveniment planificat pe 20 mai la Cluj-Napoca, vom fi acolo. Mă uitam acum pe ultimele cifre, se pare că ne vom putea întâlni într-un număr mai mare într-un hotel, într-o sală de conferințe din Cluj-Napoca. Mulțumesc încă o dată, la revedere!